The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, after being convicted, has now been sentenced to death. The 5-man, 7-woman jury found the 21-year-old naturalized American citizen guilty back in for the April 2013 attacks, reached the verdict of death after deliberating only 14 hours. The alternative was life without parole. Tsarnaev, basically no reaction from all court reports when the verdict was read out. Stephen W. Hawkins, the executive director of Amnesty International USA, responded to the sentence by saying the death penalty is not justice. Quote, "It will only compound the violence and it will not deter others from committing similar crimes in the future. It is outrageous that the federal government imposes this cruel and unusual and inhuman punishment, particularly when the people of Massachusetts abolished it in their state." Like we spoke about, Lewis, even though Massachusetts does not have the death penalty, this a federal case being tried at the federal level, thus the death penalty still on the table. And ultimately, that is what the jury opted for. Even Lynn Crisci, 38 years old, who was a spectator at the Boston Marathon back in 2013, who has hearing loss, a brain injury, chronic back pain, saying, "I stand with most people in Massachusetts. I'm shocked. That is true. Polls show that Massachusetts and Boston residents do oppose the death penalty for Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. I oppose it. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev wants to be a martyr. We've talked about it. He, if put to death, would not have to deal with this reality of what he did for the rest of his life. And you know what? This will also keep him in the news, Lewis, extending the grief of the victims and the victims' families, because now with appeals and with everything we know will come with this, the attention will continue. Whereas if you say life without parole, goodbye, never to be heard from again, it may also be better for the victims.
It could be. We've seen people on death row for decades. This appeal process can go on and on and on. And, I expect that to happen here as well.
Absolutely. I think it is almost a guarantee that this will go on for decades. And remember, 1 in 25 on death row presumed to be innocent based on the recent studies that we have. Many seriously mentally ill individuals on death row. The state should not be in the business of executing people. Could not say it more unequivocally. And Boston agrees with this in spite of the death penalty sentence for Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. We've talked about the war on the poor, which is distinguished in my mind from the war on Christmas, the war on Christianity, the war on the rich, in that it actually exists. I told you about the Baltimore Republican who thought it was sort of an interesting idea to look at taking away food stamp benefits from the parents of children who were protesting in Baltimore. I told you about Kansas Republicans and House Bill 2258, which would ban poor people from purchasing all sorts of products, including concert tickets and lottery tickets and so much else, as well as college sports tickets. I talked to you about the other laws, for example, in Missouri, where Republican Congressman Rick Bratton wants to prevent poor people from purchasing steak and seafood with food stamp benefits. Just incredible. And we have yet another example. This one coming to us from Wisconsin. Now in Wisconsin, Republicans took the first step in punishing people who use SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits. This is Assembly Bill 177. It seeks to ban people who rely on food stamps from buying a huge list of products. This includes lobster, shrimp, and crab, as well as all sorts of other groceries. Red and yellow potatoes would not be allowed. Sweet potatoes and yams would be allowed. Seasonings would not be able to be purchased with food stamp benefits, Lewis, because if you're on food stamps, your food must be incredibly bland to punish you for the fact that you have not pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps. And it's just this long list of stuff. Cranberry sauce, for example, would be banned from purchase with food stamp benefits. French fries and hash browns? Absolutely not. Pickles? Oh no, no way at all. Canned peas and green beans? Those are off the list. And when you ask Wisconsin Republican State Representative Scott Allen what the point of this is, he says it's to make poor people healthier. Doesn't make any sense, Lewis.
You know, it's often cheaper to buy canned or frozen vegetables, compared to fresh vegetables. This is very confusing to me. I think he probably is either hates poor people and wants to further this war on them, or he's completely ignorant.
Well, the organic food is also on the banned list in this new Wisconsin bill. So if the point is to make poor people healthier, why would you ban organic food? It just doesn't make any sense. And this is fascism. This is not small government. This is big, intrusive government at its absolute worst. So I think this is really about, as we've talked about before, strict father morality. You know, when parents say, if you live under my roof, you live by my rules, the sort of ultimate authoritarianism. If you buy food with our food stamp benefits, we decide what you eat. And that's ultimately what this is. They're adding an advice section to the bill where they're actually saying you should supplement your calorie intake with twigs and tree bark that you find out out in public. But you're going to have to pay for that too, Lewis, because those are the commons and we've privatized those.
This is starting to pick up steam. I think other states are going to do this as well. And do you think that ultimately this will, I don't know, maybe go to the Supreme Court? I mean, this is going to be challenged and appealed, right?
This is absolutely going to be challenged and appealed, and I hope appealed by competent individuals. I don't know how far it will go, but the war on the poor is very, very real in this country. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about George Stephanopoulos, who is now under fire. You may remember we talked about this interview that ABC's This Week host George Stephanopoulos did with Peter Schweitzer, who wrote the book Clinton Cash. The book alleges all sorts of improprieties with regard to Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. And he has already Peter Schweitzer, that is, has had to make close to 10 corrections to stuff that he said in the book because obviously the book made baseless accusations. And in a recent interview, George Stephanopoulos did a good job of sort of exposing that a lot of the claims made by the book are not backed up in fact. Stephanopoulos now is under fire because it turns out he made a $75,000 contribution to the Clinton Foundation, actually three $25,000 contributions in recent years. These were contributions that he did not disclose when he was interviewing Peter Schweitzer. The contributions are public in the sense that they were disclosed by the Clinton Foundation. When asked about this, George Stephanopoulos said, I did indeed make these charitable contributions. I made them because they focus on issues like global deforestation and other issues that I care about very deeply. And I didn't feel that I had to disclose it on the show during those segments because these are public on-the-record contributions, unlike contributions to, for example, a political candidate, which can be sort of shielded, or if it's a PAC donation in particular, although political candidate donations are supposed to be public anyway, that this was on the list. He was on the list of donors for the Clinton Foundation. I think it's interesting because it does differ from stock ownership in that these contributions were public record. I do think, though, that if George Stephanopoulos is going up there and he's interviewing Peter Schweitzer about his assertions regarding the Clinton Foundation, I would have liked George Stephanopoulos to say, in the interest of full disclosure, I've donated $75,000 over 3 years to this organization. If only, Lewis, because he's actually playing into the narrative that there is sketchy stuff around the Clinton Foundation by not disclosing that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a bit odd, and he should have known better. That being said, I'm not outraged at this. I mean, I think, like you said, it was public record. I don't know. I'm not sure what to think about it.
Well, let's explore it, though, Lewis. If Bill O'Reilly, right, was interviewing someone who was making all sorts of assertions about the Koch brothers being corrupt, and we found out Bill O'Reilly is a big donor to Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers PAC, and he didn't disclose that, wouldn't we be saying this is absolutely a conflict of interest and he absolutely should disclose that? Maybe it's different because those contributions would not be public.
That could be. But at the same time here, George Stephanopoulos did accurately point out the flaws in this book, right? I mean, they were real. He was not attacking or making things up.
No, he wasn't. He was absolutely exposing realities about the allegations. I started thinking, we recently did a story on Tesla. I recently bought a few shares of Tesla. I did not mention that during that last story. Should I have mentioned that? I mean, maybe I need to be more cautious about this as well. I don't know what the line really is. I think it's like 4 shares of Tesla. They're quite expensive, so I wasn't able to afford very many. Should I be saying that now every time we talk about Tesla? Maybe so.
Yeah, I don't think you need to disclose that if you're praising Tesla. So maybe people might want to know that. But during that interview, was George Stephanopoulos praising the Clinton Foundation? I don't think he was.
He was implicitly praising it in that he was defending their actions, right?
Perhaps in a way, yeah. But I mean, I guess that's subjective.
Send me your thoughts on this. What is the line? What should be disclosed? When would it turn into a full show of disclosures for the average news host? I don't know exactly where the line is. Jeb Bush has now become the epic flip-flopper of the 2016 election campaign, even though he has not yet formally declared, even though certainly he is going to. I think it is abundantly clear at this point. Simple question about the Iraq war that he was asked. Knowing what we know now, would you have authorized the invasion? Answer number 1 came during a Fox News interview with Megyn Kelly last Monday, and he said that he would have. Let's take a look at that video first.
Of Iraq,
Yep.
Obviously very controversial. Knowing what we know now, would you have authorized the invasion?
I would have, and so would have Hillary Clinton, just to remind everybody, and so would have almost everybody that was confronted with the intelligence they got.
You don't think it was a mistake?
In retrospect, the intelligence that everybody saw, that the world saw, not just the United States, was faulty. And in retrospect, once we invaded and took out Saddam Hussein, we didn't focus on security first. And the Iraqis, in this incredibly insecure environment, turned on the United States military because there was no security for themselves and their families. By the way, guess who thinks that those mistakes took place as well? George W. Bush.
Your brother.
Yeah, I mean, so just for the newsflash to the world, if they're trying to find places where there's big space between me and my brother, this might not be one of those.
Completely clear, direct, unequivocating, and saying Hillary Clinton also would have, which we've really thought about that now, and there's not actually evidence that Hillary Clinton would have made a case for Iraq and gone into Iraq. Answer number 2 came on Tuesday. Mr. Bush sat down for a radio interview with Sean Hannity, who asked for clarification, and Jeb Bush said, I think I interpreted the question wrong. I was talking about, given what people knew then, would you have done it, rather than what we know now? And knowing what we know now, clearly there were mistakes as it related to faulty intelligence in the lead up to the war and the lack of focus on security. My brother has admitted this, and we have to learn from that. So would he have invaded or not? He said, I don't know what that decision would have been. That's a hypothetical, but the simple fact is mistakes were made. All right. Answer number 3 came on Wednesday. He was appearing in Reno, Nevada. He was asked by 3 separate people about Iraq. He answered it would be hurtful to those who lost loved ones in the war to answer hypotheticals. So now taking a completely ludicrous approach, saying going back in time and talking about hypotheticals, what would have happened, what could have happened, I think it does a disservice to them. What we want to be focusing on are what the lessons learned. I think the focus should be on that, on the future. And then answer number 4, this is so amazing, came on Thursday. Here's the deal, said Jeb Bush at a Tempe, Arizona event. If we're all supposed to answer hypothetical questions, which he said he was refusing to do, remember, the day before, knowing what we know now, would you have done? I would not have engaged. I would not have gone into Iraq. Lewis, epic flip-flops. Which is the real answer here?
I'm shocked that this day and age, he does not realize that you can't get away with this anymore. And it has nothing to do with technology. I mean, if people can write things down, you can't get away with this. And it's really dumb. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why he keeps answering this question differently. Maybe he's trying to, tailor the answer to the audience.
And the thing is, even if he knew, the other thing that's being lost in this is, aside from the discussion about knowing what at what point, The entire thing was trumped up in the wake of 9/11, right? That's not even being addressed here. And that's a huge, huge issue. So Jeb Bush really having trouble. I think he's better off if people focus on the flip-flop and not on the fact that even considering this invasion is ludicrous. And that really is the most disturbing thing of all. Send me your thoughts on this, twitter.com/dpacman. Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our program is funded directly by the audience through the membership program. So we continue to make this show available for free to everybody because of the support from our members. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up today. Vote with your dollars. Get access to the bonus show, which includes, of course, the world famous beer reviews from producer Lewis and so much more. We do talk about actual news on the bonus show as well. Today's new member of the day is Gregory Hassett. Gregory, thank you for your support. Join Gregory as a member at davidpakman.com/membership. Bill O'Reilly commented on that study from the Pew Research Center, which I told you about last week. It pointed out that Christianity is on the decline in the United States, that about 1 percentage point per year we see a decline in those identifying as Christian in the U.S. Bill O'Reilly decides to weigh in. Does he point to the displeasure with Christian extremism in the U.S. as a sort of reason why people are moving away? No. Did he blame the general move towards science and secularism and away from religion? No. Did he point to the decreased need for religion given humans' increased understanding of the world around us? No. He blamed hip-hop and rap for the decline in Christianity. Here's Bill O'Reilly.
On the religious front, another poll, very provocative. According to a Pew Research study of more than 35,000 American adults, Christianity's on the decline. 2007, 78.4% of Americans described themselves as Christian. Last year, 2014, that number drops to 70.6%. Among the non-Christian faiths, Jewish Americans up slightly, Muslims up half a percentage point to just under 1% of the population. However, the biggest growing segment of religion, those who reject it. Atheists, agnostic, nothing, up 50% to 22.8% of the population now. So what's happening? There's no question that people of faith are being marginalized by a secular media and pernicious entertainment. The rap industry, for example, often glorifies depraved behavior, and that sinks into the minds of some young people, the group that is most likely to reject religion. Also, many movies and TV shows promote non-traditional values. Truth is, if you are a person of faith, the media generally thinks you are a loon.
It used to be, Lewis, that rock music was corrupting people, right? It was Led Zeppelin is corrupting people and Pink Floyd is corrupting people. Yep. Then, pop music riddled with sexual innuendo that kids listen to. Pop music is corrupting people. And now it is rap, which happens to be traditionally, historically, black music. But as it turns out, Bill O'Reilly is wrong because black people are not the group moving away from religion. If you look at that, you actually see that the African American community is one of the more religious communities by and large in the United States. So once again, Bill O'Reilly's racially tinged hypotheses about religion and culture and society are not only incredibly offensive to many people, they're also just not supported by fact.
And he looks for really easy answers to complicated questions. He's basically saying that television, rap music, movies are things that are preaching non-traditional values,
right?
And that is what's causing this change. I mean, I think that's just it's too easy. It's just a cop-out.
The causality in O'Reilly's mind is young people listen to rap music, they hear descriptions of depraved behavior, it sinks into their minds, and then they bail on religion. I mean, it's a really nice and tidy hypothesis that he's wrapping up with a bow for us.
Yes, and it's he's killing two birds with one stone here. He gets to explain very easily why Christianity is on the decline, and he also gets to demonize rap music.
Yeah, he's checking off a bunch of boxes. What's that? Kill two birds with one stone. Certainly, I think is the absolute right metaphor to apply here to Bill O'Reilly. Why do you think? Question for the audience. Leave it as a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or email us. Why are people moving away from religion? Do you think it is science? Do you think it is something about society and culture? Send us your thoughts. We'll compile some of the best responses, and then we'll do a follow-up on it. And we're doing a huge follow-up next with Dave Rubin about free speech and the idea of, I support free speech, but that idea we will discuss after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to have Dave Rubin back on the show, host of the Rubin Report. He's been talking about free speech and the First Amendment, so have we. There's been this interesting thing happening, Dave, after we had the Pam Geller Muhammad cartoon contest, and we've had a few other incidents related to free speech and the First Amendment. And the conversation I want to have with you is not so much about the First Amendment per se, but more about the idea of free speech. Some people have come out and said, listen, free speech and all that goes with it, but deliberately doing stuff to irritate others simply to get a reaction is not really responsible free speech. And the pushback to that has been, if you qualify free speech at all, like responsible free speech, it's inherently a limitation, because you're saying there are types of free speech that are fully free speech and some that are not. How should we kind of analyze this in the way of kind of pragmatic people who want to talk about important issues?
Yeah, well, once again, this is one of the things that is really making me evaluate my whole political ideology and really separating me from where I thought I was a full progressive, and it's making me realize that I'm a true liberal, and again, that I stand for liberal principles, as I always tell you. But I think the progressives have gone off the deep end here. There is no but. Free speech. You have the right to free speech. You can say anything you want. Now, you can't threaten violence on someone, direct violence to hurt someone, right? But beyond that, you can draw cartoons of whatever you want. And by the way, when I say draw cartoons, so not only can you draw cartoons of Muhammad, but you can draw cartoons that deny the Holocaust, or you can turn on any episode of Family Guy. I did a video where we posted a clip from Family Guy where Jesus is sensually bathing in front of Stewie in an extremely erotic, Stewie's a baby, in a very erotic scene. Okay, this is just one of a gajillion things that they do on Family Guy. Family Guy, of course, and South Park, and The Simpsons to a much lesser extent, but Family Guy and South Park make fun of everybody. They make fun of AIDS victims, of black people, of Asian people, every horrible Jewish stereotype you can think of. They make fun of everybody, absolutely everybody, and you have a right to do that. They make fun of mentally challenged people. These are highly offensive things to everybody. But so if you pick one group of people and you say, with this group of people, we can't offend them as much, well, you're opening a can of worms that you cannot stop once it escapes. Because then every group has a right to say, well, you know what, you said it about those guys that you're not going to talk about them in a way they don't like, so you're not going to do it about us. And before you know it, no one will be saying anything. And what I think is scarier about the but part is that there's a chilling effect. So, for example, I know for sure that when you talk about this stuff on Twitter, it gets a certain amount of traction, the free speech stuff. But there are a ton of people that are automatically afraid to either retweet the pictures or to talk about it because they're self-censoring. And I fear self-censorship far more than I fear the government. I'm not a big fan of the government. I think the government does all kinds of awful stuff, NSA, Patriot Act, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the self-censorship, us giving up our rights by ourselves, is just as scary. And this is somewhere the progressives have failed miserably. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to free expression, no matter how offensive it is.
But agree 100%. At the same time, we can still point out deliberate attempts to inflame in a way that is completely pointless and criticize them without criticizing the right of the people to say that. I think a really great example, actually, is the Westboro Baptist Church, in the sense that What they say is absolutely deplorable. They show up at people's funerals who are grieving and they protest and they say that one way or another it's all happening because someone was gay or supported gay rights or who knows what.
Yeah.
And I completely reject them and why they are doing it and everything they do. But we have to, I think, distinguish between self-censorship and just not doing things deliberately to upset people, right?
Well, look, they have the right to do it. I don't like the Westboro Baptist Church. They are an awful group of misguided, sad people whose minds have been twisted by religion somehow and who are just spewing awful hate in the worst circumstances. You're right. They go to funerals to spew this stuff, terrible stuff, funerals for soldiers and all kinds of awful stuff. But you don't have the right to shoot them. If they were at those funerals and they were demanding that people there be killed, and then there were people arriving with guns, there's some sort of legal recourse there. And people need to understand that distinction. There's a distinction between calling directly for violence against somebody versus saying, we're going to draw pictures about this or that. By the way, I'm not even defending Pam. I don't like this woman. I don't think she's bringing goodness into this
completely
world.
Reprehensible Southern Poverty Law Center hate group,
Sure.
etc. Yeah.
Sure, of course. I'm not defending her at all. But, if you look at the cartoon that won the thing, I think the guy's name is Bausch Faustin. I might be mispronouncing that. If you look at the cartoon that won, it's a cartoon of an artist's hand drawing Mohammed. So you see the artist's hand and Mohammed saying, "You can't draw me." And then you see a little, a little text thing and it says, "That's why I draw you." So that's not hateful. That's actually doing what Charlie Hebdo did. I don't know what the rest of the cartoons did, but I'm saying the one that won was making an interesting satire on the idea that the religion says, don't do this, and that's why I have to do this. And by the way, every comedian in the history of the world, there's a line. And the point of the comedian is supposed to get to that line and figure out how do you cross it without getting killed, because people want the truth, but if you're not funny when you're telling the truth, often you'll get killed. And that's what's going on here. Where are all the comics demanding free speech? It's not about defending Pam Geller as a person. It's about defending our ability as a country and people to say whatever you want. And look, I know some people are going to say, if they were saying this about the gays, if they were saying this about the Jews, you would be against it. And that's just simply not the truth.
Well, I think our shows are evidence of that, right, Dave, in the sense that we critique and push back with data against what those people are saying, but we never say they should not have the right to say those things. Now, if they're inciting violence specifically by statute, that may be against the law, and that's a completely separate issue.
Absolutely. And look, that's why when Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty said that stuff about gay people, I didn't demand that anyone kill him. I didn't even demand, I said that, look, if, what channel were they on? FX or
A&E, I think, right?
A&E, whatever it was. If A&E wants to fire them, if they want to make a business decision, then so be it. That's how capitalism works, right? That's how the markets work. If the government had come in and said, you can't say that, that would have been a violation of free speech. And I absolutely would have defended Phil Robertson. So people, there's a couple issues here because there's the legal issue with the First Amendment and how that's related to the government doing stuff. And then there's this chilling effect that I'm talking about. And then there's just the general misunderstanding of all of that people don't have. And also, a lot of our education system's not that great in the United States. I don't have to tell you, Pac-Man. And because of that, a lot of people just conflate all these issues. And then with the progressives especially, I think there's knee-jerk reactions to everything based on emotion. And it's sort of well-intended. I get the well-intention. Don't mock people's religion. That's well-intended, except that's just not how freedom actually works.
And the other thing in the very limited time we have left is that there's this other issue, which is sometimes also misunderstood, which is free speech doesn't include freedom from the consequences of that speech. And as long as the law is not being broken, people can be offended. They can tune out. If, like Dr. Laura, you go on an N-word laced rant, your employer can choose not to renew your contract. The consequences of speech are also part of free speech as long as laws are not being broken.
Absolutely. And, Bill Maher has said several times on this that in a way, what the progressives are doing here, he said this week, he interviewed Ayaan Hirsi Ali. It was a wonderful interview with someone who left her religion because they were trying to kill her. And now she's trying to fight to reform it. And there are progressives that are demonizing her for doing that and making it sound like she's a bigot and a neocon. It's actually completely legitimately insane. And what he always says about this is that in a way, what people on the left are doing by saying, but here in this case, don't do it because you're punching the wrong way. It's the bigotry of soft and low expectations. That you're saying there's something wrong with this group of people because if you make fun of them, they're going to shoot you. They're the ones that are going to shoot you. So in a way, you're actually legitimizing what Pam Geller is saying.
Right. We need to take special caution when it comes to certain speech.
Yes. And that's really sad. I really would encourage all your viewers to watch Bill Maher sit down with Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And look, we can debate all day long this endless thing that Chomsky and Sam Harris are debating and that everyone seems to be debating now between religious violence and state violence. And does your geopolitical positioning in the space in the world, is that more important than your religious upbringing? And are all the religions equally as awful? And blah? We can debate all that stuff forever. But the fact is that right now, now we need free speech more than ever. And the more we ourselves take it away from ourselves, the more that they, whoever they are, and I'm not talking about a religion or a government or whatever, but the more we do it to ourselves, the more that nefarious forces will force us to do that. I mean, it's every dystopian future there is, and it's happening right now unless we do something.
All right, we've been speaking with Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report. Dave, thank you as always.
I'll tell you how I really feel about it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
There was a cringe-worthy segment on Hannity's TV show on Fox News where Fox News contributor Gavin McInnes was on with Tamara Holder. A very bizarre argument about feminism and women. Now, I'll warn you that Gavin McInnes is a sort of white separatist. He was interviewed by the New York Press, and he said he was pleased that most of the hipsters in Williamsburg, Brooklyn are white. And he's been quoted as saying, quote, "I love being white, and I think it's something to be very proud of. I don't want our culture diluted. We need to close the borders now and let everyone assimilate to a Western white English-speaking way of life." A way of life, of course, that was violently imposed by European settlers onto the native population of the United States, ignoring the realities of what the actual native culture is. Let's ignore that for a second. So on one hand, Gavin McInnes, history of wanting to impose so-called white culture on everybody in the U.S. combined with a sealed borders policy, pretty aggressive white separatist stuff. We once interviewed a white separatist named Craig Cobb who had essentially the same idea. He goes on Fox News and he says, listen, basically women choose to make less money than men and they are better off and should be at home as housewives. Some of the just most insane contentions, most offensive contentions that you could make under the so-called anti-feminist umbrella. Let's go to the video.
There's different ways to look at the data, but the big picture here is women do earn less in America because they choose to. They would rather go to their daughter's piano recital than stay all night at work working on a proposal. What? So they end up earning less. They're less ambitious, and I think this is sort of God's way. This is nature's way of saying women should be at home with the kids. They're happier there.
I hope that your viewers do not take you, sir, seriously.
There's a great book you should read. It's called Why Men Earn More, and it's all about women choosing to put family over work, and that's why they earn less.
Having a choice does not mean that you're less ambitious, and your comments are absolutely deplorable. Sean, I would like
less ambitious in the workplace.
I would like you to address this. You're a father. You have a daughter.
If you were a real feminist, you would support housewives and see them as the heroes, and women who work wasting their time.
You said that women are less ambitious.
Women are less ambitious.
You have also said that women are better suited in the home.
Yes,
You've also said that, that women are emotional and women shouldn't run for public office. All of these things that just
I never said women shouldn't run for public office.
Yes, you have. You've said that
If we're talking
before.
about 50% of the population, generally out of this 250 million people or 150 million people, most women are happier at home. They are pretending that they like working, and they're not making money because they don't stay all night at the office. They don't go the extra mile.
Why
They
am I
don't work
sitting
all
here?
weekend.
I'm
You're making a
sitting here-
mistake. You would be much happier at home with a husband and children.
Oh, boy.
This is a guy, Lewis, who's quite disconnected from reality. But there is one important thing to talk about when we discuss the wage gap. Is the average man's salary higher than the average woman's salary? Yes. But that is not really the wage gap we should be focusing on. What we should be looking at is, for the exact same work, what is the wage gap? That's a much smaller wage gap than just looking at the average man's salary versus average woman's salary. And it actually illuminates what really the issue is, which is you have more men in positions of power in the boardroom because we still have not caught up in that sense when it comes to gender equality in the workforce. And so since you have more men in the boardroom, that skews the average salary up for men. And it also puts men in positions of power with regard to determining the salaries for men and women. So that's really where the focus should be, not just on the average salary. The wage gap is smaller than that would show. It still exists. But what we really need to address, I mean, the offensive nature of women are better off as housewives and that's what they should do and they'd be happier and blah, blah, blah. That's so insane we don't even need to address that, is this idea that women choose to earn less, right? And that suggests that women say, oh, you know, this job, if I were a man, I could be earning $80,000, but because I'm a woman, I'm just going to choose to earn $60,000 in this job. Have you heard a more absurd assertion?
It implies that a woman starts off. His argument implies that a woman starts off making the same thing as a man, but then somehow it gets lowered as time goes on because she is not doing enough work. But no, they start making less money than the man. And so, I think his argument kind of falls apart. I would encourage people to watch this entire clip because it's really a great piece of Fox News garbage.
Hey, is anyone shocked? Well, and Fox News garbage. Sean Hannity actually did seem pretty appalled by what was being said, at least playing the part, right?
Hold on. He was laughing. And at the end, he said, I'm not going to comment.
Okay,
so,
fair enough. So, all right,
yeah.
maybe shocked is not the right way to describe it. Is anyone shocked that the same guy who thinks non-white cultures should be forced to assimilate in the U.S. thinks that women should be at home in the kitchen? I mean, I'm not at all surprised at that combination of opinions.
No, nor am I. I think if he were 20 years older and Phyllis Schlafly were 80 years younger, I think that there might be something wonderful there.
The Amtrak train crash happened because the engineer was gay. That is not just the opinion of one lunatic bigot right-winger, but multiple. Several commentators in the right-wing echo chamber have suggested that the presumed homosexual sexual orientation of the Amtrak train engineer involved in that recent crash was a factor in causing the crash. It started when Chuck Johnson's news outlet, Got News, reported breaking. Got News IDs gay activist train engineer who caused Amtrak crash. He later announced that the engineer was white and gay, and that gays have a higher rate of mental illness and proclivities for using meth. Thus, it's possible that the engineer being gay was a factor in the crash. Then our buddy Sandy Rios gets involved. Sandy Rios from the American Family Association said the following. Let's take a listen.
Now, I am not saying that, I am not inferring to those of you that are gay rights activists and who like to monitor the show, I'm not inferring that this accident happened because he was gay, but I do think it's an interesting part of the story, and you can bet it will be edited out. I would say this, I know of at least one situation, and I don't know if this relates to Brandon in any way, but when people are going through some confusion that has to do with the very core of who they are, like, for instance, someone I know who was a pilot for a very large airline, started taking hormone shots to change genders and put his entire plane at risk because he had an emotional, angry outburst to something that happened. And he was suspended for a very long time and then reinstated I don't know, but I think it's something to be discussed. And I think it's a factor, and I'm doubting you'll hear it anywhere else.
Oh, we're hearing it elsewhere, Sandy. We're hearing it from all sorts of right-wing bigots. We're hearing it plenty. You're not the only one who came up with this harebrained theory. She's not saying, Lewis, that the accident happened because the engineer is gay. It happened because of the confusion the engineer was experiencing because he's gay. Completely different, right?
You know, I'm not convinced of that. No. I think it's kind of similar. This is. Did you talk to our Amtrak friend about this?
I did, yeah, and he doesn't seem to think homosexuality played a role in this. Just so you know, it's quite interesting how, for all the ways in which the left and right are similar with regard to elected officials and campaign finance and blah blah blah, certain types of deranged bigotry come from one side. If I said to you, Lewis, hey, someone thinks a train crash happened because the engineer is gay, do you think it's a liberal or a conservative? There's no question in your mind. You would know right away.
I would know right away, and that's unfortunate. You know, they'll get angry for us saying that. They would say that liberals are just as homophobic, but they hide it.
No, liberals see homophobia, so they are actually really the ones who are anti-gay. Just like when liberals see racism, they are the racists. Anyway, garbage. There's a hypothesis from the right. The train crash happened because the engineer is gay. We have a voicemail number if you want to comment on any of these stories. 219-2DavidP is the voicemail number. Let's take a listen.
Hey, David. Brian from Washington here. I just saw your video on the helmet laws and the gentleman that was killed in that. I'd just like to voice that, a lot of those accidents could be avoided if they would just change the laws on the lighting that's allowed on motorcycles in most states. Like here in Washington, you're not allowed to have any colored lights other than red or yellow on your motorcycle.
Yeah, I've actually heard this from a bunch of people that if motorcycles were allowed to have more distinctive lighting, that a lot of accidents would be prevented. It's an interesting thing. We should definitely look more into that. On the bonus show today, we are announcing the next David Pakman Show member town hall. Make sure to become a member. It is this week. If you want to participate and ask Lewis questions, you can ask me questions. We will also talk about Mitt Romney's charity boxing event. We'll talk about a Miami poop map and the new Indonesian military female applicant test, the new one. All of that and more on the bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership to sign up. Oh, and I'm going to reveal some of the perks for our upcoming Indiegogo fundraiser. There's some very cool stuff. Talk to you on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.